Oh wow, I guess everyone showed up all of a sudden. Well, welcome to our course today. Folks are inputting their favorite sandwiches into the chat, so feel free to keep doing that throughout today's session. All right, for those who have not already, if you have a webcam, if you feel like you're in a safe place and you want to show us your face or even just get on for a second and wave hello. We'd love to just see that you're there. I can see many of you are already here, which is refreshing because the meeting Leslie and I were just in, everyone was off. So it's nice to see smiling faces. Okay, so as you can tell, all of these sessions will be recorded, and this one is being recorded right now. So what we're doing in the last few years is we have decided that we're leaving the lecture sort of open as an optional opportunity for you to engage with us in a live setting. But if something comes up, if you have a doctor's appointment or just life happens and you can't make a lecture, don't worry about it. They will be recorded and put up on our website. It will then be up to you to go and watch those awesome live recordings or recorded recordings. But just so you know, those will be online and we will send a follow-up email after each session so that you have a link to that recording as well. Okay, so getting some of that logistical information out of the way, I want to formally welcome you to our course. This is session 1 of our Adaptation Planning and Practices online course geared towards recreation. We really appreciate all of you who have showed up already, and we're really excited for the course. It's going to be great. So just some other logistical information, mute yourself. I think you at this point in time know how to use Zoom, but just in case you can find the little microphone button and press that so that you're muted. And, just try to keep yourself quiet during the lecture session. We'll have a question time later on. Okay, so before we get started, or I guess we are getting started, we wanted to introduce ourselves. Several of us are here right now, but we have a pretty big team of folks who are going to be leading you through the next 8 weeks of the course. And so for all of us who are on the call, I'd like, everyone just to introduce yourself. I'll go first. My name is Danielle Shannon, and I work at the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science. I'm a climate adaptation specialist and I'm based in Houghton, Michigan, and I go by she, her pronouns. And I'll pass it on to Leslie.
Hi, everyone. I am Leslie Brandt. I use she, her pronouns as well. I am a climate change specialist with NIAX and the Regional Climate Change Coordinator for the Eastern Region of the Forest Service. And I'm one of the co-authors on the recreation adaptation menu that you'll be using later in the course. And I'm really excited to be here and see everybody's faces, and I'll pass it on to Natalie.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Natalie. I also use she, her pronouns. I'm the Climate and Tourism Outreach Specialist for Wisconsin Sea Grant, and I'm based at our Lake Superior field office in Superior, Wisconsin. I'm not sure who else is here. Kristen, I see Kristen, but...
I can go, Natalie.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much. Hi, everybody. Good to see you and meet you. My name is Kristen Schmidt, and I also work with the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science. I'm based out of Duluth, Minnesota, and I tried to change my background to a recreationally appropriate local image here. So, trying to get into the course. I got to help Leslie out with the recreation menu and with testing the menu specifically with a recreation project in Southern California, which was really fun. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you. And let's see, I believe we have Courtney as well on here.
I'm here. Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Courtney Peterson. I also am a member of the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science, and I use she, her pronouns. And I'm based out of Colorado State University. So I've done a lot of adaptation work in the Southwest and the Intermountain West, and I'm excited to get to help out with this course and get to know all of you better. And I'll pass it off to Patricia.
Hi, everybody. I'm Patricia Leopold. I am a coordinator of the Climate Change Response Framework in the Mid-Atlantic and Central Appalachians regions. I'm one of the NIAX people who work out of the Houghton, Michigan area. And I don't know, I think this is probably my 10th or so online adaptation course that I've been a part of in some capacity. So this is a whole new recreation focused one, and I'm super excited to learn a lot from everybody.
Okay, did Anna Marie go? Did I space out?
No, not yet.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Anna Marie Rutledge. I'm a climate outreach specialist, also with NIAX. I'm based in St. Paul, Minnesota. I also use she, her pronouns and will be helping out with the final 2 lectures on monitoring and climate change communication. So I'm happy to see you all here today, and then I'll pass it back to Danielle.
Woohoo! Got a big team here. And at this point, you're probably saying, what is NIAX? All these people work there. Believe it or not, there's actually over 20 of us on the team who sort of make up the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science, and you're getting a great slice of probably the best of the crew, right, in this course. And in addition to our great partner, Natalie Chin, we're excited to have her here today too. So for those of you who are curious, we're all part of an organization called the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science. And the work that we do really is geared at, as it's stated here, to provide practical information, resources, technical assistance related to ecosystems and climate change across the Midwest, Northeast, and beyond, really. Our work, as you sort of got from those introductions, is pretty varied based on what kind of tasks that we're dealt with. But we really do focus on that interaction between climate change and ecosystems in a variety of different ways. We also have a whole separate team that works on carbon and on ecosystem modeling. But many of the instructors here today are in that world of climate adaptation. Our organization is chartered by the USDA Forest Service, by universities, nonprofit, Indigenous conservation organizations. And really the purpose of that work is to share, sort of be that boundary spanning organization that can connect all of these different perspectives, but have that same, trajectory of trying to help ecosystems cope with a changing climate. And that's sort of our role, is to be that technical service provider in the middle of all of these really interesting perspectives about land management. Another elephant in the room, another organization that we're proud to be part of, is the USDA Northern Forest Climate Hub. And this is a really interesting organization where many of us, all of our work really supports the USDA mission of helping to provide support and to all of our stakeholders within the United States. So the USDA Climate Change is this really interesting organization that is regionally located across the US and does similar work to NIAX, but our organization really does focus on that ecosystem component, where all the other hubs also focus on agriculture. So you can find more of our work that's located on the USDA Climate Hub's website, and you can ask us additional questions about that if you want. But thanks to the hub, we're able to put on this course today. Okay, so kicking it off for real this time, this is our agenda for today. So now you've gotten to know us, we're going to move into a little of the course overview, provide some background information on why we're here and why we created the course and what we're going to do in the course. And then finally get to a place where we'll start talking about step 1 of the adaptation workbook and explain your assignment for this week. Just a heads up, we have been asking you for your step 1 information, and we'll talk about how that step 1 information you've already provided will be integrated into this week's homework. So, okay, so but before I begin again, I want to say that I want to acknowledge why we're all here. We're here because climate change presents many challenges and uncertainties that really will test our expectations of traditional outdoor recreation over the next 5 to 100 years. We know that the ecosystems that are part of the lands that we care about are changing now and will continue to change as the climate is rapidly changing, and that these fundamental changes that we're seeing and we're experiencing are going to have huge impacts on how we interact with the land down the road. So we created this course as an opportunity for us to really dive into that topic even more, to really evaluate, how might those climate changes have an effect on the things that I want to do, or the way that I, care for the land and I want to set things up for others to interact down the road. So we know that the climate's changing, it's a huge problem. And we know it's now becoming part of our work as well. So, we're here to sort of work through this together and to face these issues head on, and really in a lot of ways to learn from each other. That's a great asset of the course, is to have that opportunity for group sharing and maybe sparking some additional ideas that might help you in your own project development. So this course will really guide you through that process of thinking about climate change, but might also set you up to think about climate change as like a filter to your management, to the things that you're doing on the land. And will hopefully teach you how to adapt and learn to respond to climate change as you're thinking about your own unique goals and values for the land. So I just referenced the word adaptation a few times, and I just want to take a minute to define what adaptation is. When we think about climate change impacts, we want to also think about solutions, things that we can do in response to climate change impacts. And that's where this idea of adaptation comes in. Adaptation is defined as the adjustment of systems in response to climate change, and often this can mean preparing an ecosystem to better cope with those changes. When we're thinking about actions, adaptation actions are often designed to specifically address a specific climate change threat or vulnerability in order to enable us to continue meeting those goals and objectives that we have on the land, such as, recreation, fishing, hiking, etc. But when we, really start thinking about what is an adaptation action, we want you to sort of not get too worked up. Adaptation actions are often sort of exactly in line with those sustainable ecosystem-based activities that you're already seeking or using, the tools that are already in your toolbox related to sustainable management, conservation, and restoration. But what we want you to see is that climate change really does underscore the importance of these practices and makes them even more important down the road. But in the end, throughout this course, you'll be faced with some pretty tough questions, and what actions you take will be very different from somebody else who's in your cohort, and that's because it's all based on our own values and our own risk tolerance. How much risk are we willing to accept when it comes to climate change impacts in the area that we care about? So a pictorial version of the work that we're going to do today, over the next 8 weeks. When we think about adaptation planning, you might say, well, what is that? Like, I don't really understand. And in a lot of ways, there are lots of different frameworks that are floating around out there, but the biggest idea here is that we want to intentionally and explicitly consider how climate change can be incorporated into our management. So you might be over here sort of thinking about your project and you're like, hey, we should think about climate change. But what does that mean? Well, in this course, we're going to help you bring together all of those pieces, the climate change models, projections, into a framework that will help to create an adaptation plan that will hopefully get you to where you want to get to, but with actions that are more robust to climate change. So the big question of the day, what actions can be taken to enhance the ability of a system to cope with change while still meeting our management goals? This is the most common question I think that we ask on a weekly basis to all the people that we work with. And it is arguably the most important. How can we walk that line where we're evaluating and considering how climate change will affect the lands that we care about, but also find a way through that so that we can continue to meet our goals and our objectives? But unfortunately, there is no single answer. I just talked about values and risk tolerance. And so I just want you to get really comfortable with this uncomfortable idea that, based on where you're starting out and the site conditions that you have, those site characteristics, soils, elevation, exposures, threats, and stressors, it's going to be really different from somebody else. And so the actions that you're going to come up with are going to be very different from those of anyone else in this class. And that's because it's tied to your values and your goals related to visitation, recreation, seasonality, wildlife species, whatever it is. So last time, I'm going to hammer this home. There is no single solution to adapting to climate change, and there really isn't an easy button either. And again, that's because we're all incredibly unique. So last time, _bold, this is a safe place where we're all going to have different opinions, and that's okay. We're all going to have different perspectives on the things that we're doing, and that's okay. So, maybe you've read the course syllabus, and it might also feel like this course is a lot of work for a free course. But, taking the time to create an adaptation plan, it really might feel like an extra step, but it really is important and critical to that long-term effectiveness of what we're trying to do. It's always been impossible to predict the future, and really climate change is only going to make that uncertainty even more apparent. But when we practice adaptive management, which is something that we'll be teaching you throughout this course, we're also learning how to adjust and manage in the face of uncertain future conditions. And the tool that we'll be using, the Adaptation Workbook, can help us clearly and intentionally tell that story. And most importantly, help us tell a story that connects our actions to climate change risks. Okay, so what is this adaptation workbook and why are we using it? Might be a good subheader for this. Throughout this course, we'll be using a series of resources called the Climate Adaptation Workbook and Adaptation Resources. And what this is really a framework that helps to break down and sort of demystify this adaptation process. We created this set of resources really explicitly just to help folks consider climate change in their management. The framework itself is an adaptive management process, and it's a decision support tool in the form of a workbook and related adaptation resources, different menus like Kristen mentioned earlier, and we'll talk about more down the road. We like this process because it's incredibly flexible, and that's why we have these courses, because anybody can come. You can have diverse goals, diverse land ownerships, but because of the way the adaptation workbook is set up, it allows the person who's using it, it allows their story to be told, because the adaptation workbook centers on the manager's expertise and judgment. You're bringing to the table the different aspects of your site, and you will use the adaptation workbook to unfold different vulnerabilities and come up with adaptation actions. We will not make recommendations, and that's not what the tool will do. So the tool is really there designed to help break down this idea of climate change and to create a cohesive narrative. So the adaptation workbook itself is a 5-step process, and it goes through the different steps of defining your location on the landscape to evaluating how climate change will affect that site based on that site's inherent and unique characteristics, soil, slope, exposure to water, etc. Then in step 3, we'll evaluate how those climate change impacts may affect our goals and our objectives. Can we even complete the work that we've set out to do, given all of the climate changes that are ahead? In step 4, we will identify our adaptation responses. How will we respond to these climate threats and vulnerabilities? What can we do that's still in line with our goals and our objectives, but considers those climate change impacts? And lastly, we'll plan different actions that we can take to help evaluate the effectiveness of our actions that we've defined in step 4, so that down the road we can go back and revisit and decide, were those actions enough? Did those actions actually help us get to where we wanted to get to? So, in short, the adaptation workbook is going to be a really important tool for you throughout this course, and it will help you account for different risks and connect your actions to climate change vulnerability. And it will also always be available to you. So once you create an account and you put your information in, it'll stay there. So you can come back and you can look back at your plan, and it'll sort of stand as a long record of all of the different ideas that you had when you were creating your adaptation plan. One cool thing about the adaptation workbook and the adaptation resources is that a lot of people have already gone through this process before you. And we have right now, I think, over 425 different projects that have used the adaptation workbook in a real world situation and have created an adaptation plan. Right now, up on our website, you can go and view all of these different, or many of these different projects. I think we have, maybe a quarter of the total up online, but it's kind of nice, right? Like this tool has been vetted by the larger community. If you were to go to the website and check out those real world examples of climate change adaptation, maybe you'll find a project that has a really similar perspective or goals or location to your own. Each of these projects really do provide a different lens of what adaptation looks like on the ground. And, it is something that we'll continue to bring up throughout the course. We'll provide adaptation examples in each step so that you can sort of understand and how that group was interpreting the questions that we'll be asking you in each of the adaptation workbook steps. So one example of a group that has used the adaptation workbook in their planning can be found in northern Minnesota along the Superior Hiking Trail. When they looked at their trail network and they started to evaluate all of the different climate change stressors that could have, and prioritize those that would have the largest impact on their location, they decided to take action in response. So their story is that they are planning to consider soft closures and visitor redirection and alternate area hikes to deal with more visitation due to those longer, wetter hiking seasons. So when they're looking at changing seasonality, they're looking at, shorter winter, but earlier spring, they're looking at those wetter conditions. They're trying to think about how can we deal with that and extreme rain events on our hiking trail. So that's one example of a real world adaptation tactic. Another example would be the San Bernardino National Forest, a project that Kristen mentioned earlier and something we'll bring up again in each of the different steps. On this national forest, they are considering actions to disperse recreation outside of a very popular riparian corridor and plan to reduce visitor exposure to heat in response to extreme heat days. So when they thought about climate change, they thought of the myriad of ways that it could affect their visitorship. They really prioritized extreme heat days as something that could have a huge impact on the health and safety of those visiting that national forest. So this is one way that they plan to respond to that climate change impact. But there's so many more stories to tell. Those were just like a snippet of much larger projects that were much more thorough than I gave them credit for in those examples. So you should go to our website, forestadaptation.org/demos, and poke around and see what you come up with, because there really are some great stories to be told on the website. Oh, click there for more info. Okay, so what did you sign up for in this course, besides someone who's just going to talk to you as if you're going to talk back, but I know you're not because it's a lecture. I can't wait for discussions. I'm so excited to meet all of you. Okay, so if you've read the course syllabus, you have an idea of what is ahead for you, but if not, we'll go through those details now. So, as I've just described, the Adaptation Practices online course really was designed to help folks like you integrate climate change considerations into real world projects. And, we know what your projects are, and we're really excited to hear more about those. But the training was designed to not only engage you in the topic of climate change, to help you identify those local climate change impacts, but to break that down and connect it to the things that you're trying to do to evaluate climate-related challenges and climate-related opportunities. Then we'll take you to a place where you will design specific actions to adapt to changing conditions. so that you can have in the end a climate-informed project adaptation plan. You can walk away and say, hey, I've really thought about my project from a few different directions, and I think that these actions will be the most robust to a huge range of uncertainty and risk. In the end, not only will you get an adaptation plan, but you'll also get a little mini training that Anna Marie will give us on communication, which is a huge part of this whole process. We can do all of this planning, but we need to be able to coherently tell the story to our folks in our organization and the people that we care about to get them engaged and on board with these ideas as well. Also, over the next 8 weeks, you'll have access as an open door policy to all of us at NIACS. If we have the time to meet with you in person, we will, but we're always free to communicate via email. And you've already met so many of us, so we hope you'll take that opportunity to reach out to us if you need help during the whole course. The course itself is 8 weeks long. And we've sort of detailed this in the course syllabus as well as on email. We know that quite a few people have different groups, and so we're just asking that if you're one individual from a group, to have at least one person from your project at each of our sessions, just to help really relay and check in on what your progress is. Although the lectures are sort of optional to attend, although we still want you to watch the YouTubes, we do expect that you will participate in the discussion sessions, because again, those are not recorded, and that is the opportunity that we have to check in on all of your progress, on all of your project progress, and gives us a good understanding of how the group is flowing, and we can make adaptations based on what we learned in the discussion session. We do require a check-in, so at some point in the course, pretty soon you'll hear from one of us who introduced ourselves today, and then we'll check in again after step 4, just to see where you are, if there's any additional resources we can provide, or maybe some coaching to get you over an obstacle. At the end of the course, if you would like, we will make a certificate of completion for you as well. The lecture sessions, they happen weekly, every Monday at about this time, and they will last anywhere between 30 minutes to 1 hour. The first couple of sessions are longer and will be the full hour, but thereafter they might get shorter. The course will run from now until the end of May. We'll get to see spring together, but we will have a vacation week. So just in case something happens earlier on in the course and you get behind, don't worry, you'll have an extra week in the middle of the course to sort of make up for all of that, and you can get back on track. Our breakout sessions are 1 hour, and we say they're every other week, but because of that vacation week, it feels like it's just 4 times that we'll meet with you, and it's sort of every other week. But you have been assigned already. I know Leslie sent out emails to everyone, so you've already been pre-assigned to either a Tuesday morning or a Wednesday afternoon session. If you are not sure what group you're in, just email us and we'll remind you. And if you're looking for more information on those sessions, you'll be using the same lecture link that you used to sign in today. And you can look in the Getting Started guide for more information. Okay, so this course is sometimes information overload, but it's also like trying to find all of we're all different types of learners. So we gave you the course syllabus that has all the information, but when you're inside the adaptation workbook, you'll also find all of the information. And that's what I'm showing here. When you log in and you create a project and you nest it under the course, you should see all of the course information in your dashboard when you first log into the adaptation workbook. If you don't see this information and you don't see homework on the side, that means you haven't created a project that's within the course. And we'll get there in a minute, but and describe more about what I'm talking about. But also all that this information is in your syllabus, sort of a tutorial on how to set up an account on the adaptation workbook. Okay, so we're giving you a lot of information in many different places because this is an independently led course. You're sort of checking in with us weekly during lecture and every other week in discussion, but almost all of this will be on you to stay fully engaged and to get your work done each week. So it's just a reminder to say that because it is self-led, you're gonna maybe have to work hard to prioritize and protect your time when it comes to getting this work done. So, do what you can to turn off distractions. We'll send follow-up newsletters to remind you that there's certain things that are due, but a lot of this will just be on you. But that's fine. I mean, don't be scared. It's just a little bit of homework. It will be fun, and it often doesn't take that long. So some people do like block off time in their schedule to get it done each week, and that might be something it'll work for you as well. We do expect that the homework will be complete, Sunday evening or Monday morning, just so that we have some time between that week and lecture to sort of check in with the group to see, how folks are doing, because we can see your progress on the adaptationworkbook.org. Okay, so if you have any questions, please check back on that syllabus. But get really excited and get ready to have a lot of fun, because not only are the course expectations that you'll learn something and you'll get something out of it by creating an adaptation plan, but you'll also have a great opportunity to network with all of the folks who are here today, and we'll do that in our discussion session. So something to look forward to is hearing from folks from all over the US, because we have a really geographically spread out group, and it'll be a great opportunity just to sort of find those commonalities, to share your ideas and successes, and again, to reach out to all of us as well. So that is all I have. I can take a question if anyone has any, and you can put them in the chat if you have questions as well. And I'll hand it over to Leslie.
All right. Who's ready to get started? I'm ready. All right. So we're going to get started on step 1. So in step 1 in the adaptation workbook, we're going to be defining our location, project, and timeframes. And the key questions we're going to be answering are, where are you working, and what are your goals and objectives for this particular area? Now, we already had you do a lot of this thinking, but at this step, we're going to be refining those ideas and then getting those into the online workbook so that you can move forward with your project. So the first step, we're going to be defining our location, the project, and the time frame. So this is supposed to be a real world project that you're already working on or you're planning to work on that is associated with a particular place. And that's going to become apparent relatively soon, but you definitely want to have a location in mind. And you will be taking some time to refine your project details in this step. And if you're stuck, feel free to reach out to us and we're happy to help you. So how do you get to that right level of complexity? The ideal is some level of complexity. So we want a project that maybe has a couple of different topic areas or maybe a couple of different site locations within a broader area. Maybe it has a few objectives and timeframes, and that's going to be what's doable within this 8-week course. So, a little sampling of this and that. You don't want anything that's insanely complicated for this course. So if you're going through like a forest plan revision process or something like that, that's probably too much. But you could take a chunk of that and focus on that for this course and then work through the process later. So the idea is to just choose a really manageable piece that's not going to overwhelm you. And on the other end of the spectrum, you can certainly do something really simple and straightforward if that's what you have the time to do. It might be, you might get through the steps relatively quickly and not get a ton out of this course if you pick something too simple. But if that's what you have time for and you just want to get a flavor of what this course is about, that might be a good route for you. So try to stick with kind of that medium level of complexity when thinking about your project. And this is why it matters so much for you to select a location. So when you go into the adaptation workbook, you are going to select a project associated with this course, and we'll add some more instructions on that and send that to you after our lecture today. But you want to not select just a project, but you'll be able to select a project associated with this course and drop a pin in a location. Now, if you're working across a larger area, you can just select kind of the center of where you're working. But that is going to become important because in the next step, it's preloaded with climate change impact information based on your location. In addition to your location, you're going to name your project something. Make it something that's easy for you and your team to recognize and something that we can recognize when we're looking through your project descriptions. If you named it in your step 1 sheet that you sent to us, just use the same name if you're doing the same location. Provide a short description. This doesn't need to be long. You can leave that blank. And then for number of acres and size, those have to be numbers. And then you can pick an ownership, and it can be a multi-ownership if it's more than one owner. And then for project type, you'll want to pick recreation project. So let's get specific about the goals and objectives that you're focusing on the course. So after you've gone through and selected your project location, think about your project in terms of locations or topic areas within the broader project. So if you're working at a recreation site, you might have a campground and some day use areas, and you might want to split those out. You might have a road project in addition to a campsite, or there might be different ecosystem types within your recreation area, and you want to divide it out that way. Depending on your location in the country, there will be some preloaded forest types that you're welcome to use if you're interested in different ecosystem types. Otherwise, you might want to think about other topic areas in which to define your project. So this could be different habitat areas, different types of facilities, or different kind of management topics that you're interested in. So management topics could be things like land cover, ecosystem, or management topics that are relevant to your project area. And they can be predefined based on your ecosystem or land cover that are preloaded in the workbook, or they can be custom. So if you're looking at trails or boat launches or ski lifts, you might want to create a custom management topic within your step 1.1. And so how you do that is you'll get into the workbook, and for step 1, you will see if these are available to you, and they're not available for all parts of the country. There will be these preloaded forest types. And if any of those are things that you want to add, you can click on the plus sign and add them. Otherwise, you can create a custom forest type or management topic by clicking below, so in that orange area. And that's where you could add in campsites or trails or picnic areas. And once you click on that, you can give a name to your management topic and then describe it. So let's say you had like the upper campsite loop, and that's the title. And then you might say, 44 non-electric sites and 2 vault toilets or something like that. And then you would save it. And then that's going to show up on the right side after you've added it. So it'll be under My Property or Project Area. Then in the second part of step 1, we'll be defining our goals and our management objectives. Goals are broad, general statements that are usually not quantifiable, and they express a desired state or process to be achieved. And you have to have at least one goal for each management topic. Management objectives are concise statements of measurable planned results that correspond to those established goals in achieving a desired outcome. So you need at least one objective for each goal, but you can have more than one objective for each goal. And for your entire project, try to have at least 3 objectives, but no more than 12. So let's say you could have 1 goal and 3 objectives, or you could have 3 goals, each with 1 objective. Those would be fine. You could have up to, 12 different goals with 1 objective each. That's probably getting a little complex. But try to, again, hit that middle ground between not overly complex, but not overly simplistic. So you want to get at that Goldilocks zone. So with the complexity of your objectives as well. So let's say your goal was to provide developed recreation opportunities. Now you don't want your objective to just sound like a reiteration of your goal. So establishing a variety of day use sites might be a little bit too vague. Maybe a middle ground would be to describe what types of day use sites you're trying to provide at a particular location and where. That would be kind of right at that Goldilocks zone. But you don't also want to get too prescriptive either, where you would be saying exactly what you're going to do and what materials you're going to be using. Now that's really getting at a tactic for implementation, and that's what we'll be exploring more later in this course. Another goal might be to provide trails for multiple uses. And again, you want to be specific, but without being overly prescriptive in your objective. So your objective might be to establish a combined hiking and mountain biking trail that connects a trailhead with a creek. You don't want to get to the point where you're setting design standards for how wide that trail is going to be or what it's going to be constructed out of. You also don't want to be so broad where you're not really describing what that trail is going to be used for or the general area where it will be. So some things to keep in mind here. If possible, use your goals and objectives that you already have. We don't want you to be making up new goals related to climate change. That's what this course is going to force you to do later. So right now, just think about what are your goals for your site anyway? Are you trying to provide recreation opportunities? Are you trying to increase safety of visitors, increase visitation, restore a stream, build a trail? And then we will be adding on how climate change is going to impact that site and your goals and objectives throughout the course. They can be area-wide too. You don't necessarily have to have a goal associated with a management topic, but you could have an area-wide goal for your whole property and then have management topics under that with specific goals for that. You should be looking at a time frame of about 10 to 20 years or maybe beyond that for achieving your goals, but then maybe your objectives are going to have a shorter time frame, maybe only a few years. And what we want you to do is complete this by next Monday. Now, there are very specific instructions in the course syllabus about how to set up your account. And once you have your account set up, if it's associated with an email address other than the one that you used to sign up for the course, let us know and send an email to me or Danielle, and then we will add that email address to the course. So don't start with step 1 until you have been added, your account has been added to the course. You're going to complete your step 1 in your adaptation workbook, and then complete the homework section following step 1. And that's just like a few very basic questions. And if you have time, you can start reading ahead for step 2, but I would, stop and just fill out the information for step 1. So how do you use the adaptation workbook? So once you get in, you should see this dashboard. If you don't see the homeworks listed on the left side, that means you did not create a course or a project associated with this course. You will also see a bunch of things that you can expand or contract on the top. There are video tutorials that you can use to learn how to use the workbook. And then there is also information about additional examples and materials that you can collapse in that white section. So once you collapse out of that, then you can fill out you're going to do define management topics and management goals and objectives in homework 1. We also want to make you aware that next Tuesday, there is an optional, though I would say highly recommended, session on the impacts of climate change on recreation. So this will be provided by Natalie and Anna Miller, who is from the Utah State University, and they will be talking about how climate change is going to impact different recreation resources and opportunities. And so whether you're in the Tuesday session or Wednesday discussion session, you can all come to the Tuesday session at 11 a.m. Eastern time. We will be recording that just like this session, but it'll provide you an opportunity to ask questions of the presenters and also engage more with your fellow classmates. So we'll be using the same Zoom room as we are now. Looking ahead, our upcoming discussion sessions are this week. So this is where we'll be introducing our projects, getting to know you a little bit better. And then our next lecture will be on introducing step 2. And there will be that optional lecture session next week. So if anyone has any questions, we'll be here to stay on the line and answer them. And yeah, if you have questions about how to set up the workbook, we're happy to help walk you through any of that.